สวัสดีครับ Good morning, distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chiang Mai. Please have a seat. My name is Ukrit Sangwanhai.
And I am Anishatri Rojananon. We have a very privilege to be your host for the whole morning session.
I'm very happy to receive all of you to the Asian Network for Public Opinion Research 2019.
And over these few days, the conference will provide all of us plenty of opportunities to share knowledge and insights.
I'm so excited that this conference attracts scholars and interested individuals from various countries.
So now we have over 200 participants together with 127 posters. 127 papers and 21 posters from our delegates from all over the world.
And since 2012, the Asian Network for Public Opinion Research, or ANPOR, has been an important venue for scholars, practitioners, journalists, and students from various countries around the world. And amongst many activities of ANPOR, the annual conference is perhaps the largest event.
And now, the event's organizing committee is consisted of Chiang Mai University by the Faculty of Mass Communications.
With the Asian Network for Public Opinion Research
and Asia Pacific Communication Alliance. So our partners are
Asian University Network Forum on Advances in Research,
the Center for Asian Public Opinion Research and Collaborations,
School of Journalism and Communication, Tsinghua University,
with a time sponsorship from Singha Corporation Company Limited,
and the Siam Cement Public Company Limited.
We really appreciate your sponsorship because without you this cannot happen. So,
yes, time now we would like to bring you some live and slice of our culture, Lana culture.
Right, and for the whole event we will get in the atmosphere of being in Lana. But now, may we talk a little bit about the agenda, what we gonna go through for today and tomorrow?
Yeah, for this morning in this room, you have panel talks and also keynote speech from our earner speakers. And in the afternoon, the event will split into small presentation.
Right, and also tomorrow.
Yeah, and tomorrow as well.
Right. So, and the details of the conference is already in your registration package. Should you have any information, in case you require any further information, our staff at the registration desk would be very happy to assist you. So now it's time for some colors, right?
Yeah.
Some colors. So, ladies and gentlemen, coming up next, we would like to present a performance called Phon Khan Dok Mala Thipaya with our dancers who would like to bring you joy and magnificent beat of our local Lana music. And I think our performers are ready.
Yeah, and I would like to talk a bit about the detail of the show. The show is conducted by Miss Welta Sirisuk, our major artist, together with her fellow.
So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Phon Khan Dok Mala Thipaya. for all the performers from the Faculty of Fine Arts, Chiang Mai University. Very, very magnificent. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the ASEAN Network for Public Opinion Research 2019 with such a diverse and dynamic audience we have here.
And to formally welcome all of you, I'm very privileged to introduce our very special lady, the president of Asian Network for Public Opinion Research, is here to welcome all of you to the conference. Welcome Associate Professor Dr. Chantima Kiokeo.
Associate Professor Dr. Chantima Kiokeo.
Do you hear me? Okay. Distinguished guests, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Sawadika. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 7th annual ANPOR conference, which will be held in conjunction with the first Asia Pacific Communication Alliance or APCA annual conference. Collaboration between ANPOR and APCA, which is one of the largest pan-Asia alliance of social scientific research and educators, is another proof of ANPOR being a real network, a network of colleagues and friends. Our 7 years in existence since 2012 proved to be a great success as an international academic collaboration venue. We have accomplished a lot for such a young and small network. We have published 7 full years of our quarterly journal, the Asian Journal for Public Opinion Research, which is listed in several databases: Scopus, Google Scholar, KCI, Web of Science, DOAG, and another database. Thanks to the spirit of team working of the ANPORians and their dedication and hard working, without the teamwork, ANPOR could not come this far. This year's timely theme, Power of Public Opinions and Multicultural Communication Toward Global Transformations, will provide a venue for discussion on how these phenomena affect the stakeholders. An intersection between global and local context is inevitable in the process of globalization. Global transformations require understanding among various nations and ethnics, socially, culturally, technologically, politically, and research, empirical and critical inquiries, including public opinion research in multicultural communication sphere. This year, ANPOR, APCA, annual conference in Chiang Mai could not be success without the dedication and hard working of several concerned parties. Allow me to take this opportunity to thank Chiang Mai University under the leadership of Professor Rom Jiranuklom, Faculty of Chiang Mai, Faculty of Mass Communication, Chiang Mai University, Professor Thirapat Wanarimon, and APCA under the leadership of Professor Chen Changfeng, but she could not make it all time. She will come tonight. And she is an executive dean of School of Journalism and Communication, Tsinghua University. And the Asian University Network Forum, on advances in research under the leadership of the Dr. Shosen Yamahata. Yes. The Center for Asian Public Opinion Research Collaboration Initiative of Kabusi, Professor Sang Kim Cho from Chungnam University. Thanks also to our honorable speakers who traveled 1,000 miles to share their knowledge and experience. Professor John Kennedy from Indiana University, Professor Min Hang from Tsinghua University, Professor Dieter C. Umbach from Potsdam University, Germany, Dr. Angat Chong, Chair of the Asia Pacific Internet Research Alliance from Macau, yes. And of course, Kun Sutisha Yung here today. The conference will not be a conference without participants. This year we have participants travel from different corners of the globe, more than 15 national, and we saw a new face from Bangladesh, from Myanmar. Yes, you are welcome. We have more than 200 submissions from more than 15 countries, but we only have limited time, so we could not accept every submission. This year is very special. I saw faces of old friends who stood with ANPOR from its conception to mention some. Professor Sang Kim is the founding president. Professor Dr. Said Arabi from Malaysia, yes. Professor Dr. Ofer Feldman from Doshisha University. Yeah. Of course, Dr. Angat Chong, Dr. Dadang and his team from Indonesia with his support. Yes, we come this far. And the list is still long. I cannot say all, but thanks to you all. Last but not least, our dedicated team for working hard for this event, as perfect and beautiful as you see here in this room. The CMU Faculty of Mass Communication, Dr. Pimul Panchainan, Dr. Pim, Nong O, Miss Chitrapan Ratana Wong. Where is she? Yes. With her very hardworking, yes. And ANPOR team, I cannot miss to thank them. With them from the day one of ANPOR. Miss B, Tanisha Bunwatanopan, and our General Secretary, Tui Natakon, Ruyang. All of you who submit to the system will be familiar with him. Willie, Mr. Project Director, Dhanaraj Kiokeo, where are you? Okay, at the back. And Achan Keng Achanarit Pichetan, he is our graphic designer. Yes. I look forward to seeing what we will achieve next. New conference, new research projects, new opportunities to collaborate, and new members and countries joining us in our mission. See you all in the beautiful historical and cultural city Chiang Mai. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Chantima Kiokao. Now I would like to invite to the stage the representative of Asia Pacific Communication Alliance, Professor Dr. Min Hang, for her supportive statement, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Kiko. As Professor just explained that Professor Chen Changfeng cannot be here in person today because of her other obligation there in Tsinghua, so she will be arriving tonight. So on behalf of her, I'm here to present a greeting message from Ding Chen. Dear distinguished guests, good morning. First of all, on behalf of the Asia Pacific Communication Alliance, APCA, I would like to warmly congratulate the opening of the conference on power of public opinion and multicultural communication towards global transformation in Chiang Mai, Thailand. The conference is in conjunction with the 2019 ANPOR Annual Conference, which is co-organized by Chiang Mai University. As president of APCA, I am very grateful to the president of ANPOR, Professor Jatima Koka, and her team for their hard work and very close collaboration. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I also like to thank you, delegates, very much for your attendance. Thank you as well. Thank you. The Asia-Pacific Communication Alliance, APCA, was founded in 2018. It's currently located at Tsinghua University in Beijing. It is one of the largest pan-Asia alliances of social scientific research and education. It is an academic platform for communication and journalism research collaboration and educational exchange in the Asia-Pacific region. The APCA unites more than 20 communication associations from 16 different countries in the Asia area. Vice President of APCA include the initiator, Professor Shu Huazhou, President of Chinese Communication Association from University of Missouri in the United States. The initiator, Professor Yuren John Kai, former President of Korean American Communication Association from University of Alabama in the United States. Professor Jatima Koka, President of Asia Network for Public Opinion Research from University of Thai Chamber of Commerce in Thailand. The director of the academic committee of the APCA is Professor Terry Flaw, the president of International Communication Association from Queensland University of Technology in Australia. The Secretary in General of APCA, also the most important contributor at the founding stage, is Professor Song Kam Chom, the former President of the Korean Journalism Communication Association from Cheonnan University in South Korea. The steering committee members also include Secretary Professor Jack Chiu from Chinese University of Hong Kong, advisory committee members, Professor Duncan Rimat Hidat from University Pajajaran, the president of ISKI in Indonesia. So there are 20 special council members in it. The APCA would like to join your conversation from different perspectives and academic paradigms, and thereby invites original research papers and panels that explore various dimensions of communication with Asia characteristics within the context of globalization. The APCA especially welcomes research that discusses and deliberates on different types of intersection between global and local in communication practice and research. Prospective contributors are encouraged to focus on research from various outlooks of their respective academic backgrounds. Empirical, historical, and critical approaches are equally welcome here. So dear distinguished scholars, thank you again for attending the conference. I believe you will be broaden and deepen our understanding of the power of public opinion and multicultural communication towards global transformation. I wish the conference a great success. The APCA wishes you a pleasant stay in Chiang Mai. Thank you so much. Professor and Dr. Chen Changfeng, President of the Asia-Pacific Communication Alliance, and Executive Dean of the School of Journalism and Communication at Tsinghua University, Beijing, China. Thank you.
So, thank you, Professor Dr. Min Hong, for her kind statement.
And now it's time for the official opening. I would like to invite our Chairman of Honor, the Vice President of Chiang Mai University, Associate Professor Rom Jiranukrom on the stage, please. So we will take a few minutes for the setup. And right after this, Professor
at the
Rom
same time,
Jiranukrom would come up on the stage. Please, please.
And at the same time, I also would like to invite Associate Professor Thirapat Wannarimon, the Dean of Faculty of Mass Communication, Chiang Mai University, for a brief report statement.
Dear Vice President, good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining us at the 2019 ANPOR APCA Annual Conference. To our eminent speakers and delegates who come from all over Asia, I bid you a very warm welcome to Chiang Mai Province, Thailand. We are indeed honored to have you here with us. We have about 160 participants from more than 10 countries gathered here today, making our conference a truly international one. Through this conference, the Asian Network for Public Opinion Research, or ANPOR, has entered into collaboration with the Faculty of Mass Communication, Chiang Mai University, to widen the scope of our academic and research perspective by incorporating a body of knowledge from the discipline of communication studies to the stage of academic exchange, and at the same time, to explore approaches to sustainably improve Asian countries. The theme of this year is Power of Public Opinion and Multicultural Communication toward Global Transformation. Public opinion and multicultural communication are not only the drive towards a global reformation, but also bring a transition to a better global society. Our diverse session themes will allow for interdisciplinary and cross-border knowledge, building differentiation, reflect different roles of public communication in a wide variety of contexts. Creative development and empowerment of members of society. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the member of Faculty of Mass Communication for their hard working, and also our ANPOR team and Tsinghua Northern University to make this activity happen. And most of all, I also would like to thank our friend, our co-organizer, APCA, Asia Pacific Communication Alliance, and UNFAIR from Japan, Dr. Chosen, Asian University Network Forum on Advance in Research, and Center for ASEAN Public Opinion Research and Collaboration Initiative for their supporting in making this conference possible. Other organizations that have contributed to this conference include Singha Cooperation and SCG Public Company that sponsor us for this event. In closing, I encourage participants to actively engage in these interesting sessions over the next 3 days. And I wish everyone a successful and fruitful conference. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Professor Thirapat Wannarimon, Dean of Mass Communication, for the report. This somehow looks a bit more like a debate, but actually, as I was asked to do, is to give an opening remark. So, Professor Chantima Kiewkeo, President of ANPOR, Asian Network for Public Opinion Research, Professor Min Hang, representative of the President of APCA, Asia Pacific Communication Alliance, distinguished scholars to whom some of the faces are very familiar, participants, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here this morning on this special occasion, the opening ceremony of the 2019 ANPOR APGA Annual Conference under theme Power Public Opinion and Multicultural Communication toward Global Transformation, being hosted by our School of Mass Communication, Chiang Mai University. I'm also delighted that Chiang Mai is selected as a venue for this international conference. Not that Professor Chantima is an alumni of our Chiang Mai University, but also gathering from the performances that you saw last night during our traditional Kantok, traditional Lana or Northern Thai dinner, variety of shows and performances reflecting multi-cultures that we have here. The city of Chiang Mai, we are proud of its history of over 720 years, founded in 1296. Lots of attractions, rich in culture, as you perhaps saw part of the dances from different parts of the nation, from different parts of Chiang Mai, in which some of the dances include the dances of the ethnic groups, the hill tribes. There are 9 major ethnic groups living here in Chiang Mai, not counting 3,000 Japanese long-stay residents living here, and the same number for Korean long-stay residents, and also a large number of tourists from China contributing to the local economy of the city, making Chiang Mai a true city of cosmopolitan. All international restaurants are here. You name it, we have them all. So I'm delighted that Chiang Mai University is also part of this conference. And as for Chiang Mai University, I have to do a bit of promotion of our university. That we are the first regional and comprehensive university in the country, founded in 1964. This year, we are commemorating our 55th anniversary. So throughout these 55 years, we've gone through a number of transformations, disruptions, as you perhaps will be hearing from some keynote speakers talking about disruption, particularly in education, that we are facing in all universities. But in Thailand, this is a major challenge for all of us to go through this period of disruption, whereby learners can no longer be learners from high school graduates. We're looking for learners from different sectors, private sectors, alumni, those working in private companies, industries, who are part of the learners. That would make the learning paradigm shifted towards the 21st century learning as well as the online learning. This sort of thing that we have to go through this disruption, and that is part of the transformation that we cannot escape. So as for Chiang Mai University, happy to have you here. And for global transformation, as we all know, is an important consideration for all nations and regions across the globe. And this conference aims, I believe, to engage in meaningful conversations from different perspectives and academic paradigms by exploring various dimensions of communication with Asian characteristics within the context of globalization and different types of intersections between global and local idiosyncrasies in communication, practice, and research. Public opinion and multicultural communication are not only the drivers for national and global harmonization, but also necessary to prepare us for the unfolding changes in various dimensions as regions transition into a true international community. The conference diverse session themes will allow for interdisciplinary and cross-border knowledge. Building and the diverse sessions reflect the different roles of public communication in a wide variety of contexts, creative, development, and empowerment of the society members. I'm confident today this event will be an ideal platform to widen the scope of our academic and research perspectives by incorporating a body of knowledge from communication studies and to support academic exchanges and stronger partnerships while at the same time exploring approaches to sustainably improve the living standards within Asian countries. As I've been informed, this conference is beginning with success of having 160 participants joining and also 15 countries. So making this truly international with people coming from all parts of the world. And I am a believer in networking, in the dynamism and the power of networking. In order to achieve certain goals, you cannot work alone. By joining our hands together, we can achieve the goals more effectively. If you wanted to walk fast, you walk alone. But you want to walk far, then we go together. I should like once again to extend my sincere thanks to the President, both Presidents, and also my colleague and friend, Professor Thirapat, and distinguished scholars who are coming afar for your contribution. And I do hope this will be a platform, a dynamic platform for you to share the thoughts and ideas. Wish you all happiness, success, and enjoy your stay here in Chiang Mai. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Chair of Honors, Associate Professor Rom Jiranukrom, and the host organizer, Associate Professor Thirapat Wanarimon.
And I would like to invite both to remain on stage because it's time to kickstart. And the unwrap of the conference is here and now. So in this time, I would like to invite our co-organizer to proceed on the stage, please. Started with the representative of the Asian Network for Public Opinion Research.
And the representative of the Asian Pacific Communication Alliance.
Also our partners, the Asian University Network Forum on Advance in Research.
And the Center Asian Public Opinion Research and Collaboration.
Together with our speakers, Dr. Ofer Feldman,
Professor Dr. John Kennedy,
Professor Dr. Dieter Ambach, and together with our honored guests, and the representative of AUNFAIR, and our honored guests, starting
First Associate Professor Dr. Piti Pong Yot Mongkol, Dean of the College of Art, Media and Technology, Chiang Mai University.
Following by Assistant Professor Dr. Titiwut Bunyawongviwat, Assistant Dean for the Faculty of Political Science and Public Administration, Chiang Mai University.
We also have with us Assistant Professor Dr. Phairat Kanchana Karun, Assistant Dean, the Faculty of Economics, Chiang Mai University.
And we also would like to be joined by Dr. Butsari Peng Lengdi, Acting Assistant to the Dean of Faculty of Education, Chiang Mai University.
And finally, we would like to be joined by Assistant Professor Dr. Pasut Lasukha, Representative, the Faculty of Humanities, Chiang Mai University.
So we have everyone. And now we are about to get to the formal kickstart. And once the conference is unwrapped, that means we're gonna get to begin.
Yeah, officially begins.
So are we ready? Can we have the countdown from 5?
Yeah, please count together. 5,
4,
4, 3, 2, 1.
So there are someone we wish to express our gratitude on again. So thank you very much for all our honored guests and our sponsors, the Singha Corporation Company Limited.
And the Siam Cement Public Company Limited.
And now may I ask Mr. Vice President to remain on the stage to present the token of appreciation and souvenir to our co-organizer and partners. So now it's picture time, right?
So thank you very much for all of our honored guests.
Thank you. And now it's time for the token of appreciation. I would like to ask Mr. Vice President to remain on the stage for the presentation of the token of appreciation. First of all, to the representation of Asian Pacific Communication Alliance, Dr. Min Hang.
Professor Dr. Min Hang.
Dr. Min Hang is the Associate Dean for the International Affairs of Tsinghua University. Following by the representative of the Asian Network for Public Opinion Research, Associate Professor Dr. Chantima Kyeokeo. And also in this occasion, the representative of the Asian Network for the Public Opinion Research would like to present a present to our chairman. Thank you very much.
So please give a round of applause. So before the plenary talk start, we need just
A few minutes.
a few minutes to clear up our stage. So please be patient.
It is so nice to be among all the flowers.
Oh, this way. Oh, some of our earner guests like the stage to remain like this. So, sorry, please. So this will be more like colorful and cheerful for the talk, right?
That is right, because coming up next is the plenary session. So who do we have here?
Yeah, for the first panel talks, the talk will lead by.
Okay. Right after the setting, I would like to invite the plenary talk panelists on the stage, and the leader would be Professor Dato C. Dr. Syed Arabi bin Syed Abdullah Aidid. And he comes with his panel.
And his panel is Professor
Min Hong, the representative of Asian Pacific Communication Alliance. And also we have Professor Dr. John Kennedy.
So I would like to give some more details about the talks. For Dr. Min Hang, she will talk in the topic of
Contradictional in new technology, personalized recommendation and public attribution of communication under the algorithm distribution mechanism.
And for Dr. John Kennedy, he will talk about multinational survey research and survey experiments as small step.
And for our chair, Dr. Syed Arabi Aidid is a professor in the Department of Communication, Kuliah of Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Science from the International Islamic University, Malaysia. So, Professor Dato C. Arabi Aidid, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, chairpersons and moderators. It's a pleasure to be here. I was in Chiang Mai the last time 25 years ago. I'm back a second time. So hopefully I'll be back again in 25 years. I'm not sure. Okay, we have here two distinguished panel members. On my right is from United States, on my left is from China. I'm holding the balance now. So you have a multicultural communication problem, and the two eminent speakers will address those problems. Dr. Min Hang is representing Dr. Chen. She's been held back, but she will be arriving tonight. Yeah. On my right is John Kennedy. He's been one of the pioneer members in ANPOR. He's from Indiana University, and Min Hang is from Tsinghua University. I will not waste time. I don't know how much time we have. We're supposed to start at 9:30. I presume you'll give us an allowance of half an hour extra. So thank you very much. Can I?
Yes, and actually, on behalf of Ding Chen, we prepared a PPT presentation. Is that possible for us to present it now? So we probably have with 15 minutes, right? So, where is the PPT? So I can start. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so this is a talk prepared by Ding Chen. As you can see, that the topic, the theme here, and she and I would like to discuss is the contradiction in new technology. And here we would like to discuss the personalized recommendation and public attributes of communication under the algorithmic distribution mechanism. So I have 15 minutes, right? Okay. So I will go through this outline. So I will start with a brief introduction on news personalization as a trend. Then I will give very brief history and review on the news personalization in media companies. And I will use a case of NYT and followed by a summary and discussion. So algorithm in the news industry has been a trend in many countries in the world, including China, Thailand, and many of the other countries. So there are 3 major applications here, including data mining, automated content production, algorithmic news distribution. For data mining, so there have been applications including business operation, story discovery, social media monitoring, prediction, fact-checking, and content moderation. For the automated content production, there have been text articles, data visualization, and very emergent phenomena of news boots. But all those are not focus of today's discussion here. So here, we would like to focus more on the algorithmic news distribution. So that's a topic here. So it has been a trend in, as I said, many countries in the world. So in new media companies, usually they have more advantages of doing that because of their skills and knowledges in data. But in traditional media companies, because they are still lack of user data, that's one reason. The other reason is that they are also do not have enough data, knowledge, and skills, so they are catching up. But they have been working very hard in recent years. So here are some, okay, so it's not going on. So it has been some technical problem here. Okay, great. It takes some time. Yeah, to review the history of the personalized recommendation, so we can trace it back to Nicolas Ponting, in the year 1968, he wrote a book, Architecture Machine. There he proposed that actually there are human machine, there are possibility of human-machine interaction between machine and people. So it can help people to better recognize information and to even predict the future use of the information. And then in the year 1970s, a concept called Daily Me created there. That's a concept for newspaper for personalized information and also advertisement. So in the year 1985, Nicolas Ponting, he created the Media Lab in MIT. There have been a lot of innovative projects ongoing there. And then in the year 1995, he furthered his discussion on this topic in his book, Being Digital. At the same time, Bill Gates also joined the discussion in his book, Road Ahead, to say that there should be a predicted future for personalized information use. And also there has been a very interesting experiment conducted by freshman students in MIT. So this is an app called as Fish Wrap. So that was in the year of 1993. A group of MIT students, they found a project. On this project, they asked 3 major questions on the hometown of the participants, their personal interests and academic interests of the participants. Based on all the information, they also bring together the data from newspaper, the guidelines and information from the other news suppliers. So they try to match all this personal information with the data and information provided by news companies in order to provide what they call as personalized news. So that was the beginning. That was the start of personalized news called Fish Wrap. And Okay, it takes some time to change another. And I think the next page we have the source of, the data source of the fish wrap. Okay, so it's original code of fish wrap in 1993. And after that, we can see more personalized recommendation. For example, after New Millennium, there is a company, Daily Me, created, and there is also another organization called Curly Dot organization that's for customized news and information as well. So between the year 2004 and 2009, Google Lab, for example, they provided a customized search engine, and also they provide information through their Google social network. And here is the company information of Daily Me, and also the company information of Google. That's the first group of the media organization providing personalized information. And this is a Google social search. And this is something very interesting. A picture provided by Professor Chen Changfeng from her son's Google page. Her son, when he registered in Google, obviously, he put information of his birth year. So every year on his birth date, he will have this page appearing with birthday cakes and greetings for his birthday. So this is kind of personalized service provided by Google. And then also here is a case of NYT. So among all the traditional media companies, NYT has been a pioneer to try to explore different kind of ways for personalized information. So previously, the slogan for MIT is all the news that fit to print. But nowadays, it has been changed to all the news that fit for you. So your information, your preferences would be the most important thing for the media organizations. So here are a lot of exploration conducted by NYT. For example, in the year 2011, they launched a service called Recommended for You. Those personalized information for their users. And also in the year 2015, they created a new algorithm. They called it as Collaborative Topic Modeling, CTM. They're based on the content, they design different kind of models or hybrid models for the users. And they try to also adjust these models on users' reading behavior. So study the users' reading behavior, they try to match the user's reading behavior with all the data there. The position readers with their preference model. And based on that, they recommend all the information that would be the best fit for the readers. And this is the page of NYT, and also more personal recommendation service provided by NYT. For example, in the year 2018, there is a newsletter called You Weekly Edition, launched in NYT. They provide you the best information of the time, the news you might have missed, because according to the people's preferences, probably you will only get information what you like. But here, through this service, in addition to the information you may like, they also provide you the other news you might have missed based on your preferences. And also the other opinion commentaries try to provide you with opinions in different views. And also discover the other highlights in social, in political, or in the other areas. So this is the NYT's personal recommendation services, and their page, and their app. And more recently, this year in June, they moved from You Fit to an even more personalized service called For You. That's an app to solve the problem of information overload. So they make personalized front and the center to try to understand what's the real needs of the users. So this is you feed, and here that's a picture of for you. So those are the efforts made by NYT. In addition, there have been a lot of the other media companies are also attempting to provide personalized information for their readers. So in this digital news era, we call it as digital news era, the combination of professional journalists and intelligent data technology is so important. To summarize a bit, so what we would like to address here is first, news companies are embracing the new trend of personalized recommendation. Second, personalized news are deeply rooted in data technology. Third, to understand the user is very important for the strategic success of media companies. Fourth, abundant data support to guarantee the quality of news personalized services. And last, quality and quantity of users do matter in this process. Do I still have time? And there are, so I will mention briefly some questions proposed by Ding Chen for discussion. So she basically have 5 questions proposed here for discussion. The first question is, if based on all this progress, will personalized information restrict the people's information acquisition? So there have been some criticals. For example, the editor-in-chief from NYT said that, well, this kind of service may intensify the polarization and information bubble and prejudice among people. And also another professor, Cass Sunstein from Harvard, said that social network connection with the same, for the people with the same standpoint will limit their information gathering. But to all of this, there are response from NYT and the reaction from NYT that they try to optimize the algorithm to include a different kind of perspective in the process. The second question to discuss is, will personalization violate people's privacy? Will that be this kind of piracy infringement in the process? Because we can easily find different kind of personalized services to collect information of your geographic position, your interests, and your other personal information. So will there be any kinds of privacy infringement? There is another concern. And the third question for discussion is, will personalized impel media publicity? So we call there is a media publicity, but if we have this one person's community, we don't have information sharing between different peoples. So will that be another kind of infringement? So the fourth question is that, will personalized decompose the media's professional impact? Because in traditional media, in the traditional way, usually we have editors, professional editors as gatekeeper. They try to find the best quality of information for you. But now you decide what kind of information you want to get. So will that be the other kind of infringement? And last, we also would like to discuss the question between publicity and personalization. So does the publicity exist in news? This is the first question. And also, what's the meaning of publicity in news? Is that collective consciousness? Does it mean public space or mass collection? And also, is that a dilemma between publicity and personalization? And last, how can publicity be achieved in this algorithmic age? So that's all the information I would like to share with you, and also the questions we would like to discuss with all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Min Hang. Now I realize the funny messages I received from New York Times. I subscribe to New York Times, so off and on I get all these funny messages. Now, he's talking from the big data point of view. I presume you're taking from the experimental point of view. You're going from big to small data. Can I call Dr. Kennedy then?
Thank you. Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm not going to do as much as I had planned for this session. So I'll just briefly go over what I had prepared for you and hope that you can catch what's going on. I'm going to talk about a multinational survey research project that I engaged in. This is a project that really talks about three issues. One, multicultural surveys. Two, bullying. And three, survey experiments. I have almost no expertise in multicultural surveys. I have almost no expertise in bullying and very little expertise in survey experiments. I've been involved in a few of those, but the other two I really don't know that much about. But when I was teaching a course this summer, a graduate course, I asked the students to put down their interests, and one of the students said that she was interested in studying bullying in South Korea. She had spent 2 years after she finished her undergraduate degree in Korea teaching English there, and she had observed a fair amount of bullying, teaching it in high school, and she observed some bullying, and she thought she would like to know more about it. At the same time, I had just recently been appointed editor-in-chief of the Asian Journal of for Public Opinion Research, and thought that multicultural, multinational research is very important for AJPOR and for all of us in general. So I thought that, well, between the two of these, I can dabble in doing a multinational survey in a topic that I really don't know much about, and do a survey experiment and see what comes out. Having said that, I will aim this a little better. Okay, just back again very quickly. Bullying is a problem in many countries, and what we were trying to see with the survey that was done in both the US and in South Korea, what the difference would be. We didn't want to, ideally you would survey children who are bullying. Those kinds of surveys are incredibly difficult to do. With a sensitive topic like bullying, it would require a lot of sophisticated work to get parental consent and other sorts of things to do that kind of work. So we decided as our first step, we would just talk to adults to find out what their attitudes and opinions are regarding bullying, how much they think happened, and what they think the causes and consequences are. Monica and I are both sociologists, Monica Heilman, the co-author, and we didn't want to take on bullying as an individual act, which is often considered by most people as what caused it, that individual students decide to bully. But in fact, as sociologists, we see, no, it's really not that. It's really a social phenomenon with social causes and social consequences. And so we wanted to look at that in a very sociological manner instead of the typical individual perspective that's used to do it. I'm going to now start to be, from here on it becomes a tell-all. That is, I'm going to tell you all the things I did wrong, or half wrong, or could have done better. And what's really important to know is I knew about all of this in advance and still didn't figure it out. So one of the first issues, of course, in doing a survey in two languages is the translation across languages. I first asked a graduate student at Indiana University who's Korean, who I've worked with on another set of projects on studying autism. I'd asked him to translate it. Now he's very aware of Western science, and translated very literally. The words came right across in Korean, almost like they were in English. And I sent it to Professor Cho, and he said, "No, we have to rewrite this in Korean." So he rewrote it for me, and then we negotiated to sort of figure out what would be the best way to ask the questions in Korean. If I had been smart, we would have started in the beginning English and Korean instead of just writing in English and then asking a translation. It's an issue that for those of you who do this, it's really sometimes much easier to think you'll start yourself and get the other person to do the hard work rather than joining in and doing the hard work in the beginning. At the end, the wording was not the same at all. And what I aimed for was not asking the same question, but asking a different question, but with the same meaning. And this is always a little challenging because you're never quite sure if it is the same meaning in another language. But that was our goal for it. So the questions never, I don't think any of them were exactly the same across the two languages. So here's just one of the first things. I'm not going to spend much time looking at this as to look at the data. We have not really begun analysis of it because it's actually turned out to be a little more difficult than we expected. One of the things we could see here is, for this first one is, I'll point this out to you. If we look at the first two answers, very serious, somewhat serious, we could see that in the U.S. we think that more people think it's a very serious problem, but if you combine very and somewhat serious, the proportion's about the same, the percentage is about the same. Now, from these, there's some thought that, well, maybe Koreans are less likely to report bullying as a very serious problem. Survey researchers also know that, over a lot of studies, is that Asian respondents are less likely to use the extreme responses in a scale. And we've seen this in data in the United States where we've surveyed people, and for example, we've asked people who are native Koreans to answer a question. We've asked Korean Americans who've been in the United States for quite a while to answer the same questions, U.S. And white Americans and Hispanics, and finding out that between Asian Americans and Korean Americans and native Koreans, that there was a difference between them, but they both tended to use the extreme use ends of the response scales less than white Americans. It also turns out that many ethnic Americans will actually use the response scales more often, the extreme responses more often than white Americans. So part of yesterday what I was talking about is as we've developed more complex, ethnically complex countries, and not only in the United States, but in most of your countries with much immigration is going on, that these kinds of issues for you doing surveys are not just an international problem, but actually a national problem now. To recognize that if you ask a question, some of the differences in response are not because of real differences, but because of the way people choose to respond to survey questions. And again, this one shows again there's some differences here. And this we looked at this one. You won't be able to catch this very quickly, but one of the things that we thought was then, after looking at these data, is that in South Korea, fewer kids are bullied, but they're bullied more intensely, perhaps, than in the U.S., where more kids are bullied. And that's about our first attempt to really understand what was going on here. But it really does. It really is. We're not sure yet exactly what's happening. By the way, one of the things that over the years as being a survey researcher and working on surveys with lots of languages, I've always found that if I've asked 3 people to translate a question, I'll get back at least 4 translations. So I thought that if any of you looked at this, you would probably disagree with Professor Cho on the language, on the Korean that was used for the Koreans here. And this is just a normal phenomenon that you have to deal with and have to handle when you're trying to do these kinds of studies. Okay. Here's another one, though, is that I very quickly look at some differences in the United States and South Korea. And that is that verbal taunting, you see the different words they were used there. In the U.S. we said verbal or taunting. In South Korea it was translated to in the form of language, mocking, etc. So that is different. And you can see through the responses there, they were different. The question above was different. But what we noticed really was the difference in sexual assault, that Korean children were less likely to be bullied with sexual assault than there is in the United States. In fact, overall, it seems to be more that adults seem to think is a problem. All right. Then we to finish the survey, we ask a couple questions as a survey experiment. In the United States, we ask the adults, who they think would be, how much they think people would be bullied. And we had 2 immigrants from 2 countries, from Italy, which we thought was a relatively high prestige immigrant, and from Nicaragua, which we thought would be a relatively low prestige immigrant. And if you know American culture, that would be fairly similar to what we think. When in South Korea, we had negotiations about what were considered high and low prestige countries. We had tried a few. Monica, from her experience in the high school, in the classroom, thought that there were certain countries that were bullied more, and that students from certain countries got bullied more than other countries. Professor Cho said, no, you really don't have this right. And again, we negotiated and figured it out. And in South Korea, we chose Philippines as the lower prestige country and China as the higher prestige. And again, we don't really know if these 2 things are comparable across the 2 countries. And then we ask in a random order which came first. So half the people in South Korea received the Philippines first, and the other half received China first. In the U.S., half received Nicaragua first, and the other half received Italy first. And what we found was that I think the most important one was that there was a substantial difference in bullying of Filipino children, whether they were asked before or after the China children. I mean, really, it's such a big difference. I have to go back and look at that more carefully to see if something else was going on. But here we have run into another serious problem of trying to figure out how to do the analysis with the programming that we did. And while we've worked on these before, it turns out there were a few more things in it. But most importantly now, we have to stop, and I have to get someone from South Korea to start analyzing the data too. It would be impossible for me to really understand this without having someone from South Korea also look at the same data and give me his or her interpretation of it. So that's really where we are at the moment with this, and we expect to be moving along with this in the fall. So again, as a little bit of a summary here, I wanted to give you a little bit of my experience, and for those of you who yesterday, if you heard me encouraging you to do multicultural, multinational research, you can also recognize that the editor-in-chief of AJPOR understands your problems because he's experienced them all himself. And we know what potential, I know what potential could happen when you're trying to do this stuff. I also wanted to make sure that you saw a citation to the book that I used for much of my preparation for the study. So what you're hearing from me in many ways is really what I picked up from the book by Tim Johnson and Beth Ellen Pennell and that. I also said that Tom Smith, who wrote chapter 2 of that book, talked a lot about total survey error and the challenges of comparison error, reducing comparison error. And despite having read that and being aware of it, I didn't actually do as good a job as I'd hoped to do in reducing it. I think I'll let this go. One of the things that I did want to say, and I'm sure my time is up, just about, I think that if we had really only wanted to do public opinion research, we may have been okay with doing more literal interpretation, translations of the questions. But when we want to do social science research, trying to understand the context, because we know, for example, the word bullying in a question is really trying to measure some underlying concept that we really don't know yet what it is. And even terms like education is really a concept. It's not really something that we know what they're doing. We interpret education to be something like intellectual development, the ability to use critical thinking, but that's not what we ask. We just ask people how many years they sat in a classroom or what certificates they achieved, rather than what did they really learn and how can they use that to understand what we're asking them, and how that differs across countries. Whether a college degree means the same thing in terms of intellectual development, in terms of critical thinking, or whatever we really think education means when we ask someone from South Korea versus someone from the United States. I don't know. It's an issue that we need to do. I think that there are many half-blind spots, as I said, and that's because I was warned about these and still missed them. And now I'm getting my 3 minutes left, but I really don't need that much. One of the things that I said is as a survey researcher, we generally would do pilot studies before we do a big study. So I'm just going to consider this my pilot study. And finding all the problems that I have in trying to do this kind of research, and then we hope to get back to do some more sometime in the near future after we've both analyzed this data and then more carefully analyzed all of the kind of problems that we found while we were doing it. And part of this, of my presentation really was to bring out the idea that if we're doing this kind of work, it cannot always be based on Western science. This is what I'm become really aware of as going through this process, is starting to think about why does Western science sort of dominate the model? And that's what started us, even with this literal interpretation was a form to match question wording, because that's the ideal in Western science. And I'm not sure, and I think I probably say it's probably not correct to say that research done in Asia should be done similarly to that research is done in the West. And that only by having some way of mixing these kinds of sciences, potential kinds of sciences, will we get a better understanding of what's happening in our countries and across the world. That sitting alone in the United States and asking questions and thinking we understand bullying gets us really somewhere, but not very far. And asking in a couple countries, I think not necessarily would we do a greater job of solving the problem of bullying, but I do think that we will do a much better job of understanding the science that's needed to solve the problem of bullying. And the science of it is not only Western science. And so I encourage you for you to be thinking about not necessarily doing all of your research the way that I do it, and I know that many of you are trained, very much trained in that method. But in fact, there's a great deal to be learned if you're willing to think more about how this should be thought through from an Asian perspective rather than from the standard Western perspective that most of you have been trained in. Thank you.
I'm not sure how much time we have, but can I take it upon myself to impose another 15 minutes? Yeah, so that we can get some feedback from our members of the audience. Can I have 3 questions and then we wrap up? Just questions, no comments. Questions. We like to get more information from them. 1, anybody else? 2? Okay. Question.
Thank you very much. I'm Shahidul Haq, PhD candidate in University of Science Malaysia, and at the time associate professor in the Department of Communication, University of Chittagong, Bangladesh. Thank you. My question actually to the first presenter is regarding contradiction in new technology. Yes, we learned a lot about, the contradictions, but my question is, as an user, how can we, face these challenges? Because your recommendations mainly to the people who control it, but as a user, we are also suffering, okay, by this kind of recommendations by different organizations or these AI technologies. So how can we face the challenges? Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Philippines.
I'm Brian Bantugan. I'm from the Philippines. I'd like to give a comment to the second presenter. When it comes to surveying regarding bullying, I think, at least in our context in the Philippines, it's more important to really look at context first, and then you start translating after context, because in some cases, just hearing the word bullying carries a stigma altogether. And that, in that particular context, when you use bullying first in your survey, then it already sort of uh, develops a negative reaction to the survey itself. And in certain cultures, they don't want to name it first. They want to see behaviors. And then, I guess when you sort of figure out that they're more receptive to the label, then you can use the label. And bullying normally is defined in the Western context in many different forms. And then you go to another country, bullying is different. So I guess it's very important to really understand context first and then try to translate based on that context. And then you see parallels instead of direct translation.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So we have two questions. I'll wrap it up. Can I ask Dr. Min Hang and then Kennedy, and then we end up the session.
Okay. Thank you very much for the question. You are right that our presentation is more from the organizational perspective to say that what would be the best strategy for the media organization in this data era, right, to provide more personalized information and services to the audience, to readers and the other customers. And then from the consumer or the user's perspective, I think the issue is very much a trade-off. You know, people are facing different kind of decisions, and life is full of trade-offs. So it's a kind of trade-off between convenience and privacy, okay? So whether you prefer to get more information, more personalized information, that's for convenience, or whether you prefer to have more your own privacy. You don't want to get all the information to the public, okay? So I think it's very much the trade-off. But then for this trade-off, different people may have different kind of choices, different kind of decisions. Some may prefer to have more conveniences. For example, when I'm traveling here in Chiang Mai, I would prefer to get information, more localized information about what to see, you know, how to enjoy the city. So then, this means that I would provide the information of my geographic traveling. You know, so this is my decision. I can provide you my traveling information in order to get local information of the place I'm traveling. So that's for the convenience. But also, the other people would prefer to have more privacy, have their privacy to be protected. So I think first my answer, this is the trade-off. Then implication, to know this, implication from the organizational perspective is that they should provide a portfolio, a package solution. The package solution, I mean that on the one hand, they should provide you mass information of all the important events, whatever information you don't want to miss, okay? On the other hand, they provide you, according to your preferences, what kind of localized or personalized information for the person. So for that, I think there will be more careful design of the package, and more work should be done by the organizations providing this kind of information. So this is my very quick answer to your question. Thank you.
I really have a brief answer, and my briefest answer is thank you. And it's actually my last points was really that, is that Monica and I just jumped right in. We're going to do this study, and we came from a completely Western perspective on what kinds of things should be bullying, and then all of a sudden we start finding that we hadn't really thought through this issue. And the worst thing is I knew it. I knew in advance that I should not have proceeded that way, but sometimes there's an impetus to get things done because maybe you've promised somebody to have a plenary presentation at a conference, and you just sort of have to do what you can. But starting over, or starting the next time, we're going to be much more, I thought, thoughtful about how to handle it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got to end this session. I'd like to express my appreciation to Dr. Min Hang and Dr. John Kennedy. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you.
Thank you very much for our chair and his panel. And now may I invite Mr. Chairman, Associate Professor Rom Jiranukrom to present the gift of appreciation to our speakers, please. Starting with Professor Dr. Abdullah Aidid. Professor Dr. John Kennedy. Professor Dr. Min Hang. I'm sorry. Professor Dr. Abdullah Aidid. And Professor Dr. Min Hang.
Please take a group photo.
So, Mr. Chairman and all speakers, please remain on the stage for group photo for now. Thank you. Not just brain warming up, but very much thought-provoking. Thank you again for the fabulous talk.
And for now, before we move on to the next talk, it's time for some refreshment. So we will have a 10-minute break, and the pastries and drinks will be served in front of the room. Yeah, and it's a 10-minute break. See.
And then we will come back in 10 minutes for the second plenary talk and the session we are really waiting for because the keynote speaker is already arrived.
So please enjoy.
See you in a little while.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are sorry to interrupt your break time, but it's the time for our next plenary talk.
And the session will begin very shortly.
Yeah, and you can also bring food and drinks inside the room.
So ladies and gentlemen, please proceed to the room and we will begin the session of plenary talk very soon. Our second plenary talk would be led by Professor Dr. Ofer Friedman. And Dr. Friedman is a professor of political psychology and political behavior at Doshisha University, Kyoto, Japan. And he has published and edited and co-edited 12 books altogether, and also monographs on Japanese political behavior and communication. Also political psychology, political discourse, and political leadership and personality. And also, we have the panelists. With the first panelist is Dr.
Professor
Dieter
Dr. Dieter C. Umbach, yeah.
And Dr. Umbach will be taking us to explore the public opinion between support and obstacle of multiculturalism in Europe.
And we also have Dr. Shosen Yamahata, who talk about academic diplomacy and force of change.
So now I think if everyone is ready, and we are moving on the second plenary session. So, Professor Ofer Feldman.
Good morning again. Just to remind you, we are on live YouTube now, so don't make faces. The conference is about the power of public opinion and multicultural communication toward global transformation. A famous, when we think about public opinion, a famous joke, a famous saying in Western society will say that the only people that know everything about public opinion are taxi drivers and hairdressers. Because we are in Chiang Mai, my interpretation or my version of this saying is that the only people who know about public opinion are tuk-tuk drivers and massage parlor personnel, probably. Having said that, we have here two experts to public opinion or to what the people think about. Professor Umbach from Potsdam University and Professor Yamahata from Aichi Gakuen University. And we have a limited time for this session, for about 40 minutes or so, so without any hindrance, without any more pause, we will move to the first speaker, Professor Umbach, and you are going to talk about public opinion between support and obstacle of multiculturalism in Europe.
Thank you, Ofer. If you look at the word multiculturalism, what do you think, when is the first occasion that turned up in a print book or in a newspaper? That is, if you go into the internet, if you point out multiculturalism, you get hundreds and thousands of quotations. And we tried to find that out. And the first moment that showed up, I had my assistants from my old university look into that in English, in British, in American, in French language, and whatever it is. Was first time in the year of 1957. So it's a relatively new word which has spread out all over. And that is something which is today in everybody's mouth. The term multiculturalism has a range of meanings which is going very far within the context of sociology, of political philosophy, and in colloquial use it's mostly used with ethnic pluralism, with the two terms often interchangingly used. It's a cultural pluralism, and in whatever you want to say, in various ethnic groups, they collaborate and enter into a dialogue with one another without having to sacrifice their own style and identity. It can describe a mixed community area where multiple cultural traditions exist, like you have it in New York in certain quarters, or in a single country, if you think of Switzerland or Belgium, where you have French-speaking, Italian-speaking, etc. groups, or even in Russia, groups associated with aborigines and autochthonous and group of foreigners, they are very often in the focus. In reference to sociology, multiculturalism is the end state of either a natural development or an artificial process. For example, if you have a controlled immigration, and it occurs either on a large scale, as it did in Germany in 2015, I come back to that, or on a smaller scale within a nation's communities. On a smaller scale, that can occur artificially when a jurisdiction is established or expanded by amalgamating eras or more different cultures. For example, like you have French Canada and English Canada. On a large scale, it can occur as a result either of a high quote illegal migration and from different jurisdictions around the world. Now, I would go in view of the shortened time we have in two steps. First of all, show you that migration and refugees are not a new phenomenon. And secondly, that we have not come to an end of that the problem will go on, and especially concerning Europe. Now, if you go to the European history, we have the first migrants, refugees, or however you will call them, already in the 16th century. Why? That was the question of the belief, either Catholic or Protestant, after the Reformation. And there was a saying that meant in Latin, cuius regio, eius religio. That means which religion the Duke had, his citizens had to have the same one. That was very easy to see, but that meant there were a lot of refugees which changed their territory after that. And especially after the 30 Years' War, which was war concerning the beliefs between Catholics and Protestants, there was about the half of the population was dead at the end of the war. You have to imagine that in comparison with our two world wars. And that meant the reigning power in that country had to fill up the population. So they took whoever it was. For example, they took in Germany quite a number of refugees from the French Revolution. And we have until now, you can easily see, oh, that's a French name. His family comes from the so-called Huguenot people, which fled because of their belief. Now, the biggest part also of the other ones The Protestants flew here, the Catholics flew there. So it was an eternal movement in the population. And so it didn't start today. We have another group in the development of the refugees politics that is displaced persons. If you imagine what happened and how the territories have changed, there were hundreds of thousands which changed from East Europe to Middle Europe and so on and so on. It were about, I would say, 2 million people who changed not their nationality, because the nationality very often was not clear. When they were born, they were Germans, then they were Czechs, afterwards they were Russians, and then they came to West Germany. So these displaced person had to be handled with, and for a long time it was a big problem. There's another group, and 3.8 million people fled from one side to another, and in the last phase of that, the Federal Republic bought the people back which were there in prisons, a kind of human trafficking. Now, the development is different after 1949. 1949, we got our constitution, and the experience that many people from Germany who wanted to flee had no chance to be accepted somewhere. So in our constitution, we put one rule that those which are politically persecuted get asylum in Germany. Now the big difference is it means politically persecuted. That does not mean that you live in poverty and that you may go where you want. That is the big problem today. You all remember or have heard of the year 2015 when, as the critics say, our Chancellor Merkel opened the door. I see that much more positive. It was a humanitarian act, and everybody today is in view of the old picture of the Nazi German. It was, I think, a very positive development. But it was a very crucial moment, because if you imagine suddenly over 1 million people flood into your country, now what happened? Will everybody say hurrah? No. At the beginning there was a so-called welcome culture. The people were greeted, they were treated very nice, but from a certain point on it became difficult. So they had to be in an organized manner to be distributed over all the Federal Republic. They had to be registrated, and with that amount of people it was extremely difficult. And you can imagine they were not 100% good guys. There were also, let's say, 5% which were of dubious character, which showed later on. Now, we had then the Geneva Convention on people going from one country to another to trying to protect them. And until today, we are in another situation, not with 1.5 million who suddenly came, but per year are about 100,000 which want to enter the Federal Republic. And the discussion is going high. There is a public debate, but in the moment there is no public opinion how to handle that. Why? The problems are so different, they are so diverse. What to do with all of them? Should they be integrated, or should they be sent back, or what should be done with them? If you imagine in Thailand such a big amount of refugees would suddenly come from Cambodia, imagine how your government would react, I can foresee that, but how another normal government would react. So there is in the population not a clear public opinion. In certain areas where we are a federation, that means we have independent states, the state government succeeded in integrating that, but some of the refugees didn't want to be integrated. They simply wanted to keep up their living as they did, especially those coming from Arab countries. And it's not, so to say, a unique mass of refugees and migrants and so on. So you had to distribute them in homes. Homes is even too nice a word. You had to find places for them. And so one can say the atmosphere in the population changed. And today, the people are much more critic. They see in every small village there are more foreigners than there were ever before, and some people, especially in the East, they were not accustomed to foreigners. They knew only Vietnamese, which were by a treaty between the two states, were there as workers, but they were not accustomed. They were not accustomed to their style of living, and vice versa. The foreigners were not accustomed to the German style, and that is very different in the south of Germany, Bavaria, and in the north of Germany. So it was an awkward and is an awkward situation. On the other hand, there is a moral pressing. Every week we read how many people are drunk in the Mediterranean, and there are shocking photos from all over those places. And it's very clear that you can't leave alone Italy, for example, with their small harbors, and you can't leave alone Greece with that. And I must say, it's, in my view, a shame that the European Union until now did not succeed to find a kind of solution to distribute them. If every country in the EU, 27, take a certain amount, the rush is not so big. But as you know, and as I pointed out yesterday, there are at least 3 countries which refuse strictly to accept any refugee or immigrant. That's Hungary under Viktor Orban, that's Poland under Kaczynski, and that's Slovakia. So you see, it brings this amount of foreigners, in brackets, refugees, migrants, immigrants, brings a big danger to the European Union. I don't know how that will develop in the end. We tried to solve that in discussions. Should there be a consequence for those states and nations which do not accept migrants and immigrants? What kind of rights should they have, and how quickly would they be able to gain our state citizenship? I know it's extremely difficult in Thailand to get citizenship, but that has traditional reasons. And in Germany, it's in a unique European regulation. You have to live there for 5 years to have to speak the language. But for example, we have the problem with the Turks. What do you think is the 4th biggest city with Turks? It's Berlin. There are so many Turks in Berlin that they amount to, so to say, to such a number. And there's the problem that the first and second generation sticks to their old customs. And very often the parents do not speak German, they still speak Turkish, but there is a change. You can note that because since some time I have Turkish law students, and they are quite good, I have to say, but they have to fight, and especially the girls have to fight. The parents regularly do not allow them. they have to marry cousins somewhere far away in the flatland in Turkey. I got a threat by Turkish parents because I told her daughter to follow up her students. I said, I can't do in Germany, tell any female student not to continue because she's a girl. That would be against the law. But that was the past. So we always had a movement of, sorry for the mic, we always had a movement of refugees in Europe. And if you look at the maps of Europe, you see how territories changed every 10 years. Now there is a certain quietness since the EU, and except Yugoslavia, there was never a war since 50 years there. But we have the refugees. And if you have ever been into a camp of refugees in Italy, I've been there, that is so miserable that you go home with a really bad conscience. But how to solve? In the big cities, there are a lot of action committees which deal with foreigners, refugees, and immigrants. They try to integrate them. But the first hurdle for integration is the language. But not everybody goes into language courses. And precondition, somebody has to finance those courses. And the opinion, not the public opinion, but partially the opinion with the natives, so to say, is now they should invest in our roads and streets and not in language courses for foreign people. So it's very delicate, and unfortunately, the theme, the subject has been picked up. It is that the political parties make use of that. Especially you have one party, the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, and they very much remind to the Nazi times. They say the foreigners take our jobs, but no German would take the job the foreigners take. They take our apartments, and they get much more money than a jobless citizen of Germany. So there is quite an amount of prejudice, and the public opinion, I already said we can't speak of a public opinion, we can speak of a public debate, is changing and is becoming dangerous. So to say, anti-immigrant, anti-foreigners even. It doesn't regard the EU foreigners, but all those coming from somewhere. And unfortunately, there have been some crimes committed, especially from the Arab community. They are themselves very unlucky about that, which fosters also that. Now, the wave of refugees hasn't stopped. And on the contrary, I can foresee that it will go on. If you look at the numbers which are waiting in those camps in Greece, in Italy, and somewhere else, and even in Turkey, you know there is a big wave coming. Everybody wants to go in the prosperous Europe, but they won't get a job without education. So one strong line is to foster education. And there are some good examples when young boys try to start an apprenticeship. But then is our aliens law and foreigner law. Sometimes the master of enterprise would like to keep them because they are industrious. They have to prove that they are worth their money. They are very intelligent, but it's not allowed by the authorities. So there has to be a big change in the law and in the admittance of foreign refugees. I could speak about hours about that. I've been in an initiative, but I won't do that. Unfortunately, I think we have not come to the end of that. we are in the middle. And so you have to be prepared to read from Europe that the problem goes on, that it will even worsen. So I have no light to show you, but only a dark side of the problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dieter. Short enough. I will try to wrap up the talk here later, but we'll move now to Chosein Yamahata, and you're going to talk about academic diplomacy and forces of change, catalysts for wider transformation.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to start with a little bit clarifications. I'm not expert on public opinion, and today talks, I would like to share my opinion. If you all kindly give me or treat me as one of the public, probably my opinion can be, some of you can be shared, and probably it can be amplified, and then it can be labeled as a part of public opinions. So I would like to start with the word transformations. I learned the word transformation. Transformation is a kind of a change. Normally, it is generated, started, and also as a process transfer in university, at universities. If a university has no change, no transformation, that is not universities. But the change, the word the change is normally, a change is normally necessary when a number of people have issues which can be labeled as a crisis or serious issues or problems affecting own environment and goes beyond different borders. So, where all these sufferings or grievances are occurred, it is not in the hands of government, not at the highest levels. It is normally on ground, in communities, individuals who lacks many things that is normally can be taken for granted by many different segments of societies. When there are a number of people who have accumulated grievances, on the other side, escalation, another group who may possess many things through the escalation of greediness, there will be conflict, collision, a cause of collision. That is the starting point of all the conflicts and problems. If it affects wider population, a change is necessary. But sufferers are in many numbers, but they cannot generate easily due to lack of many factors. At the time, environmental factors are necessary. Who can play the role of environmental factors? Through the means of communication, like my dear colleague, Professor Terapat, is leading at the Chiang Mai University. Through the means of communication, university, academics. But the change based on suffering is needed in communities. So communities and individuals are far from university in many countries. They cannot afford. So what is the role of academia? If they can transform their classroom assignment, exercises, to make an engaged research, driven by, taught by sufferers at different communities and from the different individuals. What I mean is that there should be many universities which are not in the formal categorization, which is not valid in terms of formal categorizations, but university where transformation can be initiated, where academics are working, must be everywhere in the needy ground, on the needy ground in many developing countries. That is how a diplomacy, which can be connected education as sector and diplomacy and the needy grounds community and individuals. That is how academic diplomacy logic concept has been formed. So why academic diplomacy is necessary? Everyone knows in university, doing research, interviewing, survey, modeling, simulation, everything we know. But within our own language, within our boundaries, with a certain level of standardization that cannot be available easily and fully to outside world. So the diplomacy I mean, in term academic diplomacy, is a diplomacy which can promote the prevention of unnecessary happenings that can accumulate more grievances. A diplomacy which can combine and multiply many different kinds of diplomacy to reach the needy grounds, to distribute the effects to the wider audience. That is called academic diplomacy. So I would like to share some of my opinions that is normally, everybody's opinion is normally driven by 3 directions. What you see, what you learn, and what you feel, and what you hear, and sometimes what you sense. The academic combined with the academic curiosity, with the research question and objectives and case studies, and generalize and extend with the specialization, conclude and interpret the implications and policy. So in my case, opinions are driven by internet through the friends and teachers and colleagues, as the chairman said, from the taxi drivers and the massage parlor, everywhere. Everybody is source of your opinions. So how we can change those sources to become forces of our change inside, starting with the mindset, to affect other people's mindset and needs. We need a diplomacy, that's academic diplomacy. So my opinion started with some kind of, which distortion? Sorry, I'm primitive, so I can't see things, and very sorry for that. What a shame. Okay, thank you. Okay. Distraction. Okay, thank you. So that's what I learned from the book. It is the message. I don't have time, so let me rush. The oceans of poverty is a reality, but how we can change a reality to become any possibility? Is it possible or not? That's my question. That's how I start my opinion. Oh, sorry, again. Okay. These are also what I saw from internet 2 months ago. You know what it is? It's a forest fire, Amazon forest, and this is a map. That gives us a lot of thinking. Oh, a change is necessary. That is my change or other people change. I don't know. You don't know, but a change is really necessary. This map is showing. And what is this? Hunger map 10 years ago. The everyday WHP has in average supplying 5,000 trucks, 70 aircraft, and 10 ships, such kind of food supply as a needs provision to the world, needy population. We should think not to waste the food. What is this? There are sometimes very clear, well-known issues, but politicians and sometimes including academics are looking for clues, still looking for clues. And like a Rwanda case, 800,000 people already killed, but UN is still debating like that. So what I want to say is that deprivation, health, education, nutrition, poverty, women, children, environment, all you can see, plus security. All 7 factors were driving the deprived your security issue. Now you are safe, one day you won't be safe. So this is how world is using their expenditure with the G7, G8, and the whole world economy through the globalization and international trade. And each country GDP has been increased, but less than, I can see, like less than 3% of the whole world GDP is spend for health and education. That is a message. So that we need enabling mechanism, improving security, and supporting survival. How can we do this? The World UN has set the 8 goals. By 2015, it missed clearly. Then next goal, sustainable goals, again. But how these goals can be met? It is based on local issues, based on local ability and capacity. Many local countries can combine, increase the efficiency of their capacity to make their region towards the good trends. So in each region, there are different countries, each state needs a workforce which are very healthy and productive and knowledgeable. So education becomes very important. Education, communication cannot be separated. And that's why I joined this conference. And then the power of education sector is power of communication. Power of communication is power of awareness and mindset. So we need many changes through the different kinds of foundation. It is lit here, and a choice. This morning I learned at the Chinese professors that it is a trade-off. It is a choice. It's a very good words, and I learned. So this struck my opinion too. How I should deliver. What happened? Oh, okay. So basically, inequality is everywhere. So this need to be done. I need to skip many. So this is the main point. So 9 function academic diplomacy, this everybody knows in different means and different ways and as a different awareness levels. But the point here that transferring the knowledge, ideas to students. At the same time, in parallel, strengthening the volunteer advocates and retirees and activists as well. Then citizens surveying, like what our chairman said. They're listening to the taxi driver and then listening to the massage lady. It's a kind of survey and different form of survey that enrich our knowledge. So we need to do this. On the other hand, interacting with the public servant who may stay above us, but we cannot neglect. We cannot afford. Then innovation, that is a basis of change, transformation, and learning from other local organizations, ethnic organizations, media organizations, learning from them. Then, like this conference, we disseminate through the verbal presentation and reading. Okay, sorry, 3 minutes left. Okay, I'll finish soon. Then with the local administration for reform and like then, we need to activate when it is the crisis. By use of international cooperation at the different level and the local policy implication like that. So to do that, we need to categorize the fundamental baseline, the common issues and focuses: poverty, hunger, inequality, conflict. So there are many problems I listed, sorry. Okay, thank you. And then based on 4 basic blocks of problems or crisis, and the academic diplomacy where we apply as engaged research, and we were target promotion of rights and security, and we were learn about the social transformation and spread of social transformation and try to create multicultural and resilient and ecological societies, and then spreading democratic cultures and dialogue-based communities. How? So for communication, we need to change the system of interacting between individual and authority and society and community. Then vertical way of engagement should be changed to the horizontal way of engagement. Information where we center, and academia and other organization, media, internet, where we center from outside, and social transformation will be driven by empower individuals and communities. So confirming through the confirming and strengthening process. So this is my final slide, and then to implement diplomacy, which I label as the academic diplomacy, to be more effective and easy to participate by any corner of any society, any country, regardless of former university student status or faculty member status. And everybody should be the university student from different corners. Then we need a kind of 4 focuses or 4 pillars. Causative approach of focus studies, curative and transformative and promotive. Causative, we analyze on ground to find out what could be the sources, what are the genuine, the real sources. And curative, where we identify to empower the sources to become a kind of drivers, and transformative with a certain target will enable the processes to make a change to affect a wider audience, and the promotive where also amplifying and accelerate particular special change to become multiplier change, which can benefit wider audience with the whole society towards a democratization or development or equality or social justice or multicultural society. Ultimate goal is freedom. And freedom is necessary through the development. Because development is a process, that process is improving, a continuous process of improving a society. We each individual, including me who are sharing my personal opinion today, belong to society, and with that continuous process of changing or improving society by each and every individual, probably our future will be a little brighter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So if I try to wrap up within the limited time that we have, the remarks of our 2 distinguished speakers, I can say something that probably we will all hear during all this conference, basically 2 things. First of all, that the interest of the members of ANPOR go beyond the narrow definition of public opinion to include also other things that are related to what's going on in our society. And it's go also beyond Asia. And from this viewpoint, the presentation, the 2 speakers that just spoke now, joined basically the talks, go along the talks that we had in the first plenary talk, just the one that preceded us, that they offer a comparative perspective to examine public opinion and maybe call for more cross-cultural, cross-national, basically interdisciplinary studies to include the researchers from mass communication and society and the political science and even psychology and social psychology to learn more about human behavior and human attitudes everywhere. And this is my small comment about the talks that we had now. I think that we'll accept maybe 1, 2, or 3 short comments or short questions if the audience would like to ask something or to comment. Yes, there is one hand over there.
My name is Khairul Arifin from Malaysia, from IDE Malaysia. I'd like to ask my question to Professor Jusin Yamahata. First of all, I would like to appreciate the things that you highlighted on the function of the academic diplomacy. I think it's very good to build up such kind of ecosystem of our contribution. But my question is that one of the factors that influence the social change in the society that we can't ignore is the corporate sector or the institutional, industrial sector, on which their aim is more towards the market-driven force. So it somewhere, rather than would impact our social change in the society. So what is your opinion on this, and how I think the academia can play its roles. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your important questions. Actually, I prepared slides. I don't have time because the corporate sectors of each countries can be understood from the two perspectives. One is a responsible sector of the particular society in a country. So one country can be divided into 6 sectors, according to my opinion, based on studies. The public sectors and corporate sectors, and then that voluntary sector, so-called tax sector, and the media, so-called 4th sectors. And then nobody label academia, but I label the 5th sectors. And the last one is the citizen sectors, the 6 sectors. So corporate sectors are normally the profit-oriented normally. So in 2003, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan proposed a guideline. It has been like institutionalized since then. It's called Global Compact. Originally, it has 9 principles, then 3 rules, articles, or recommendations regarding the labor rights, and another 3 articles is about the human rights, another 3 articles is about the environmental rights. Of course, environment doesn't have rights, but for protecting environments. There's one more added after that, the 10. So that is how the corporate sector belong to each country, which become like a multinational corporation in making their benefit to respect the labor rights, human rights, environmental rights. So that will definitely reduce the level of grievance which has been accumulated on different grounds due to the escalation of the greedy process of either government or the irresponsible investment and corporate sectors. So actually there are enough the regulations and guidelines and the institutionalized principles. The question is how each country, government can enforce this through the rule of law and within their own constitutions, and while respecting the civil freedoms and also while respecting the market economy. But another question is how each corporation or company will integrate, because the 10 sets of recommendation or guidelines or article, whatever you may label, are like, how to say, it is a non-binding, but nowadays international community is sharing the responsibility to protect in the event of the major crisis. But it cannot be applying to the natural disaster situation, but corporate sectors are already integrated and they are very much aware of doing this.
Thank you. We have another question.
Thank you very much. I'm Shahidul Haq again. I have 2 questions to 2 presenters. The first one is actually to Prof. Dr. Choshein Yamahata. Actually, the issue you raised, it's a revolutionary idea you put, and I'm so happy that you mentioned this, but at a time I'm sorry to mention that there are many countries that we don't have freedom of expression, we don't have democratic political system, also the lack of good governance, also the rights and dignity of all citizens. Because if we don't have these, practices in our society, then I think your idea will be just a dream. So let's say those who don't practice this kind of main issues, freedom of expression, all this. So what are your suggestions for us, how to overcome this? Because it's so difficult to change the government system, to change all this. Okay, thank you very much. The second question is about, the public opinion between support and obstacle of multiculturalism in Europe. Actually, as I heard and then read your abstract, you focused on obstacles more, but according to my idea, if you can also share some of the positive things that you are also getting from different cultural people, people from different cultural background, that will be nice. Thank you so much.
If I may start, to start with a very obvious one, the quality of our restaurants has been upheld because we have so many foreign restaurants now. It is a double-faced thing. There come so many new ideas with new people, even new languages, and some of the words have been introduced in the German language. So there are quite a lot of pros for that, no doubt about. So that you got, so to say, invited to learn about foreign trade, religions, and whatever it is. Some people in Bavarian villages have never seen a Muslim and never visited what's the church in? Yeah, a mosque, for example. And so they are not unfriendly, but they simply don't know it. It's the knowledge which is absent. And so if you get to know that, the diversity will be a fruit, but not, so to say, a damage. But that changes also, it depends also on the government of the community, how they enforce that and how they try to do it. If they invite the refugees to certain festivities and so on, as they did. We have hundreds of examples where that functions and where that does not function. There is, so to say, a fundamental fear of, think of rural peasants. Do I lose my identity if I take over this or that? And usually they make the experience, no, they don't. They remain the same. But on the other hand, it's a big issue in all the newspapers. If there is, as I told you, an Arab who commits a crime, it's put on the first page, which is not justified, because there's, in the next village there is a German who has committed a crime. So there are a lot of things which are positive, in which it comes out more and more the longer the people are there. Sooner or later they become kind of Germans, and mostly they are they try to be 150% Germans, more German than the Germans, which we don't want. But it's a typical psychological effect, except some of them who want to stay in their old traditions and they will never adapt. I shorten it here.
Thank you very much for your questions. Let me respond to your question in 3 ways. Number one is that we need to have a dream. I know this is a very difficult thing, and like this conference thing, power of public opinion. So now is my opinion. Probably I may be able to convince 2, 3 out of the whole audience, and then that may spread to another ground, and probably that could be one day as a power. Now, as you said, it is purely dream, but that's one response. Second one is that we are bound by fears, fear-driven, because there are many demonstration effects in our society and communities. We are threatened. So we have an inner fear and external fears. And there are a lot of demonstration effects. Don't go beyond that. This is your border. Your constraint is here. These are the sets of constraints. So that we dare not to take action. But we are actually having full of freedom inside our heart and our mindset. We can think. We can overcome the fear, accumulation of fearful feeling, to drive your head to think new ideas that still cannot be applicable, but it can be shared, that can be amplified. So that by doing so at one point of time, you will feel a kind of confidence through the process of sharing. That's what I said, strengthening the students, interacting with the public. And the next step is like you will have a kind of satisfaction and happiness. When these three are in equilibrium, you will drive your fear away to some extent. That is second point. Third point is that because in many countries, as you said correctly, the people lack rights. People lack opportunities, people lack access. While these three are lacking, people cannot guarantee their own security. They have fear without even external factors. So how we can drive them, get rid of them? So the only solution is the transparency, transparent information, and also communication. Secret way, open way. Probably one day, as you correctly said, the dream today can be a little bit half dream and half practical things. That's my response. Thank you.
And with this sense of optimism, we will conclude this plenary talk, the second one, and we are going to move further on in the program. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much to the panel.
Wait a minute, and thank you for Dieter and Josein for the talk. Yes, now for you, go ahead.
Yes, sorry.
So thank you again. And in this occasion, I would like to invite on the stage Associate Professor Dr. Chantima Kyeokeo
To present the gifts to the panel members. Professor Dr. Ofer Feldman. Professor Dr. Shosen Yamahata. Also, Professor Dr. Dieter C. Ambach. Also, please take a group photos.
Thank you very much. So coming up next, ladies and gentlemen, it is much awaited item on the agenda because it is now to pay attention to our keynote speaker. And it is indeed our honor to introduce this distinguished gentleman to all of you. So Mr. Suthichai Yun is a co-founder of Nation Multimedia Group, and he is also the founder-editor of Thailand's first Thai-owned English language newspaper, The Nation.
He also pioneered in the broadcasting field by starting ITV, Thailand's first independent news TV station.
And now I believe Kun Suthichai is ready to navigate us on his personal journey from typewriter to artificial intelligence. So ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Suthichai Yun.
Good afternoon. I say good afternoon. When I woke up this morning, I knew I was going to speak at this 2019 ANPOR APCA, you call that? Or do you say ANPOR, APCE? I knew it was going to be a challenge, but I did not realize that it would be such a big challenge for me. Not the title of the speech, not the audience, but it's the time slot that has been given me just before lunch. This is the most dangerous time slot for any public speaker. But if it's any consolation, I would cite the motto from Steve Jobs, who kept telling his people to stay hungry and stay stupid. So please stay hungry for a while I try to give you some food of thought before some real food. I also have asked the organizers to turn off the light at the back so that if you want, you can sleep while I speak. First of all, let me make a confession. I'm not a researcher. I'm not an academic. I'm not anything. I called myself a retired journalist, now trying to be a reborn journalist. I started 50 years ago on a typewriter to write my first news report. About 2 years ago, I retired officially from the traditional media. I hope you can hear me in the back. Is the system working? Well, I started as a typing journalist. 50 years later, I retired from the traditional media, and today I'm trying to become an AI journalist. And very soon, all of you here will become AI researchers. If AI can take over our job, it may be a good thing. We can then go on holiday, and we can tell AI what to research. And in fact, you could even tell AIs to come up with a conclusion before you even start the research work. But let me tell you my personal experience in the transformation. The media industry has been one of the hardest hit industries by technological disruption. And I can testify to that because I was right in the middle of this. I hope you can see it. They tell me to point it at you. I call it perfect storm. And we're all right in the middle, in that little boat. No, it's not working. I think we will all stay in the storm forever. Now, yeah. It's not working. Okay. So we were right in the middle of the storm in this big old vessel that is bound to sink because the vessel is old, it is leaking, and the storm gets stronger every day. The only solution for the media industry, I tell my people, is that you get a lifeboat and then you try to get onto the lifeboat as soon as possible. Get many, many lifeboats, and if we're lucky, we will meet one another at the end of the horizon. One of the guys in my office raised a hand when I said that and said, but the lifeboats are very small. They obviously cannot take all of us from the big vessel. And I say, yes, that's right. Not everyone will survive this disruption. And if you do not adapt yourself and really get very paranoid and find a new model that you could survive on, then you will die. And believe it or not, in the past 5 years, in the media industry, at least 30% of the people who have worked in this industry have either died or are in coma. And the situation does not get better. And the disruption does not affect only the media people. It is going to affect everybody, including all of us here in the room. The disruption, the perfect storm is fair in a way. It doesn't discriminate professions. When the storm comes, it's not a tsunami. A tsunami at least will destroy you and stops, and then you can recreate, you can rebuild, you can repair. But technological disruption comes and stay, and it comes again and again. And even today, I do not see the end of the disruption yet. And it is fair to say that no profession, no vocation is spared from this most serious disruption, I think, in human history. Let me give you a brief history of my own experience going through this disruption. I started as a journalist, and about 20 years ago, I had this aha moment when a friend of mine came back from Taiwan and showed me a little gadget. He said, "This is called digital camera. And you know what? It does not need any film anymore." I was shocked because all my previous life, I had always known a camera that had to have film before you can take any picture. I grabbed the gadget and I ran back to my newsroom and I got all my photographers together. And I said, "Hey, this is big news. Now we can shoot pictures without films." About 20 photographers in the room stay quiet. One of them raised a hand and said, "Kun Sutichai, this is just baby toy. It does not work. You can play with it, but it's not going to work for newspaper. Newspaper needs modern equipment like cameras with film." At the time, the brands, famous brands were Kodak and Fuji. So I went back to my office and I stayed quiet because I sort of agreed with them that, of course, it's not possible for a camera without film to work. 6 months later, my same friend came back from Taiwan again and showed me the digital camera that was about twice better. The word pixel came to my mind for the first time. I didn't know what it is, but he said, "More pixels now. It's going to make better pictures." And I tried it on, and I found the picture was much better. So I went back to my photographers again, said the same thing, and the same answer was no. It's not possible. Kun Sutichai, you are always too paranoid. Whenever there's something new, you come to us and you shout and you scream and you say this is going to be very important. But it's not going to happen. We know our business because we are professional photographers. Yes, we are all, we consider ourselves professional researchers, professional university lecturers. And today we will claim that we are still professionals. But some young students are probably telling us behind our backs that no, one day that will not be considered professional. So that was my first very important aha moment. Then came another big aha moment for me when about in year 2006, a young student, university student, came to me and said, Kun Surichai, on this mobile phone, okay. What about this one? Ah. Okay, you do it there. Thank you. There was this young student who came to me with this mobile phone and said, there is this thing called something like tweet, tweet, something like, the song of a bird. If you write something in there, if you put a picture in there, and if your friend has the same, they call it apps, then what you write here would appear immediately on his mobile phone. I said, what? You're joking? I said, yeah. I said, show me. So I got a friend on the other side of the room, and then he was staying with me, and he wrote something. And then the other guy ran to me and said, yeah, it's here. It was 2006. And it occurred to me as a reporter that this is going to be very, very exciting. Because as a reporter, one of my real challenges was when I filed a story from outside the office, I had to go to a telephone booth. Any of you know what a telephone booth is? A public telephone booth is? Yeah, right here. Yeah, I know how old you are now. But I had to run to a public telephone booth and had to wait in queue because there was somebody out there talking to his girlfriend. And I had a lot of coins ready because it's only 2 minutes for each coin. So you had to wait, and then once you get into the booth, you had to talk as quickly as possible, and you have to keep putting on the coins so that your friend in the newsroom, in the office, can take down your story. And most of the time, you got it wrong. So when someone told me that I could type something in my phone and then someone else could get it immediately, for me that was heaven. So I went to my reporters again. I said, hey, there's this new technology. It's called something I don't understand. It's called Twitter something. It's supposed to be like the song, a bird song. But it works perfectly because we can send stories and pictures from now on from our mobile phone to the newsroom immediately. 99% of the reporters shook their heads and said, so what? It's not going to be popular enough, or it's not going to happen because not everyone will have a mobile phone in his hand. Then came Facebook, when you could search for things. You could put your pictures up and talk to people. But the most important revelation for me was one day in 2007 when Facebook came up. But then 1 year later, or 2 years later, in my TV studio, one of the producers came to me and say, Facebook can now go live. Live! I said, live? Yes. Show me. And I tested it. And it worked. When I say something into the mobile phone, it appears live on other phones. To me, as a TV reporter, TV anchorman, that was not only revealing, but it was going to change my life. You know why? When we do a live broadcast in TV, we go out with what we call an OB truck, outdoor broadcasting. It requires 20 people. It requires 3 cameras. It requires sound systems. It requires producers, assistant producers, co-producers. Some guys only take care of the cables. They pull the cables down, and once you start broadcasting, he sits there and waits until you finish, and then he pulls the cables back. That's all he does. And it costs us about 10,000 US dollars for a 2-minute broadcast, because you have to buy time on satellite as well. So when someone tells me that we could do live on mobile phone and at 0 cost, you only pay for the internet, that to me was the end of TV as we knew it then. ต่อไปครับ But the real change was when Steve Jobs went up to the stage in 2007 and he said, I am launching something back a few years ago when someone asked me, hey Steve, why don't you think about putting a computer, a telephone, and the internet in the same place? He said, when I heard about it for the first time, I thought it was not possible. Then I went to my engineers and I asked my engineers, hey, this is a strange, crazy idea, but why don't you think about it? Computer, telephone, internet in the same place. And he said, my engineer said, yeah, we can try, but we don't promise anything. And I said, how long would it take you? Steve Jobs said, my engineer said, 3 years? He said, no, 3 years is too long. Our competitor will be out with the product before us. The engineer said, how long? How much time do you give us? Steve Jobs said, 18 months. The engineer said, no way. No way. In fact, 3 years is the shortest possible time we could even think about doing anything like this. Steve Jobs said 18 months. Because if it's 3 years, other people will know about it. If they have more money, if they're better engineers than you guys, then they're going to come up with that thing before we do. So 18 months. After that, he went on stage and I said, today I am introducing 3 functions, 3 most important functions in human beings' life in one place. And I call it iPhone. When I saw that from my YouTube clip, I said, well, that was really the end of journalism broadcasting as I had known throughout my 30 years experience before that. Because if I can have a mobile phone and I can shoot and I can edit and I can send it and I can do this anywhere, anytime, then my life as a journalist would change forever. And that actually happened. But believe it or not, 95% of people in the newsroom, in my newsroom and in newsrooms in all the other media, did not believe that this would happen. But I had no choice, and I was lucky. I was getting old, and I was considering this decision on whether I should retire or I should start a new life. Then I decided that I will have a new life, and I quit the traditional media. One of the reasons was my frustration with the fact that most people do not believe that technological disruption is going to change everything, every profession. Because at the time, in fact, Kodak had gone bankrupt. Fujifilm had gone bankrupt. And when Wikipedia came out, almost at the same time as Steve Jobs was introducing his mobile phone. When Wikipedia came out, the whole media scene, I saw it clearly, was going to face a very rapid decline and perhaps demise if they do not adapt to the changes. In fact, just slightly before that, before Steve Jobs, 2 years before that, he went on the stage like this with his blue jeans and said, you know what this little pocket on the blue jeans is for? Most people say no. I was wondering what it was for. Now I know. So he pulled up a little white gadget and he said, 1,000 songs in my pocket. I call this iPod. That, in fact, almost overnight, the music industry crumbled. Because Steve Jobs said, why do I have to buy my favorite songs in an album? Why can't I just buy one song that I like and I pay 90 cents for it? And I can listen on my MP3 anytime. And now iPod is going to be the solution for us. In Thailand, the biggest music companies went belly up in 6 months. And since then, everything has changed. Last month, I met one of the owners of one of the biggest music companies in Thailand, and I said, what are you going to do with your music business? He said, it's only 5% of my business now. I only have the copyright of the old songs. Now the new songs, new music are being written by the artists themselves. The artists, they have their own channels, and that is YouTube. They do not need us anymore. So this is the big transformation in my own experience. Yes, Facebook Live. I told you about it. And today, my new life as a journalist is on social media mainly. I do Sutichai Live with my mobile phone and I interview people. I talk to people. I analyze news live every day on YouTube and all the social media channels and Twitter. I have as of today, 2.5 million followers on Twitter and about over 130,000 subscribers on YouTube Live. And believe it or not, when I was doing TV, my audience would usually be about 40 years old and up. Now my audience starts at 15 years old up to 90 years old. The reason is very simple. It's anywhere, anytime. And if they were not interested in foreign news before, it was not because it was not interesting or important. It was because they do not think that going to sit in front of a TV set is that important to their daily life. But now that they have the mobile phone, and once they subscribe to me, I alert them when I come on live. Whether they like me or not, they have to push it and see, what is this guy saying? And once you get hooked in the first 30 seconds, whether I talk about the trade war, whether I talk about local politics, whether I talk to an entertainer, I get the kind of audience that I never dreamt of having before when I was doing print journalism or TV journalism. But now, the problem is that when I get a wider audience, anywhere, anytime, I get this very important part. When I saw the topic of this conference, power of public opinion and multicultural communication. And this is what I want to talk about for you. When you say public opinion, it used to be quite clear, black and white. Public opinion means public opinion, meaning that what people generally believe in. But now, with social media, with the overflow of information, with all the fake news, with all the rumors, with all the unverified information that we get, when you say public opinion, you have to ask, whose public opinion? Which part of the public opinion are you talking about? And the most provocative question for you as researcher is probably, is there really such thing as public opinion now? Where do you draw the line between public and private opinion? Because a lot of private opinion claims to represent the public now. So the whole definition of public opinion may have to change. I don't think anyone has the answer yet. But everyone should realize that we are in a situation where every part of society must come together to solve this problem.
Hi. This is Sutishai Live.
Live. We are in many cases, in echo chamber. We tend to listen, to read, to watch things, opinions that fit our own opinion. I call it information avoidance, or we are trying to avoid inconvenient truth. In Thailand, it is very clear. In the past decade or so, Thai society has become very divisive. It comes to a point, and it gets worse these days. It comes to a point when you do not want to listen to anything that you do not agree with. You watch TV channels, only the channels that fit your opinion. And this, I think, is a very big challenge for researchers, for academics, who try to do research work to find out what actually is happening to the public, to the people. So it's not multicultural communication. It probably is multi-bias communication. Because you have biases all around. How do we clear this up? And how do we verify the information that you get? This is the most dangerous trend at the moment. Although I enjoy, and I think that it's mostly positive work that we do on social media. It's very democratic, it's very transparent, and it engages people from all walks of life. For me, the job as a journalist, trying to find things out, trying to get opinions from people, trying to get all sides of an opinion, I could get in and type one question and I get the kind of reactions that usually represent various aspects of society. But I need to work hard on it because I need to know that Facebook is not using algorithm to feed me just the kind of things that AI thinks I want to read and I want to listen to. So the dangerous trend is only information that affirms your worldview comes with marketing algorithm because they want to sell things to you. And they don't sell you only things. They sell you ideas. They sell you their ideas. And they keep repeating it, so much so that after a while, you start to believe what you see every day on Facebook. Or even, in China, you would say it's Weibo. They flood you with so much irrelevant information that you think that that is the world. And that is why I think we need to come together, academics, bureaucrats, the media, civil society, to try to use social media to uplift quality of information rather than falling victims to the kind of information that is becoming more divisive. So my own small piece of advice is I always think about how do we fight fake news? How do we fight algorithms that feed us only what they think we need to hear and watch? So the first thing is, don't believe yourself. When you think you are right, ask the second question. Hey, are you sure you are right? I think that is a very good way of at least starting with ourselves, that we will try to disagree with what we believe in first. Then we will try to disagree with what other people are saying. Because the trend is that we tend to talk to people that agree with us in the social media area. But if we start disagreeing with ourselves, meaning that if we start to believe in something, then ask the second question and say, am I sure? Is this really true? Is the information complete? Then, second, I think we have to wave our hand to the other side, meaning that if you know that that guy doesn't agree with what I think, then I say, hi, hey, tell me what you really think. Instead of just shut it out and say, no, you get out of my space, because I only have space for people who agree with me or who confirms my belief. Talk up. Yes, the marketing algorithm is really dangerous, because what you get in your Facebook, your Twitter, YouTube are only fed by AI. And AI has the big data about you, so much so that you would feel quite comfortable with what you get every day. Because AI will not feed you what you never want to hear. The kind of books you read, the kind of music you listen to will be repeated. Back up. So, very briefly, before you share a post, ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? I think that 3 questions would help us decide whether we should pause and think whether you should share or post. ต่อครับ
สำหรับเรื่องของ AI for
โอเค
ครับผมเชื่อแน่ว่า ทุกท่านก็อาจจะเริ่มเห็นภาพมากขึ้นนะครับแต่ผมก็ยัง
I'm
รู้สึก
sorry,
ว่า
this
อยาก
is in
จะ
Thai,
ให้เราเห็นภาพว่า
but you
AI
soon
for
understand
Tech จะต้อง
why.
เป็นส่วนสำคัญส่วนหนึ่งที่ท่านจะต้องพัฒนาสำหรับบริบทของเราโดยเฉพาะนะครับผมขออนุญาตวันนี้เป็นวันพิเศษมากๆนะครับขอแนะนำผู้สื่อข่าวอาวุโสท่านหนึ่งครับเรียนเชิญคุณสุทธิชัยหยุ่นครับสวัสดีครับคุณสุทธิชัยหยุ่นครับ
สวัสดีครับดร.ชัยและแขกผู้มีเกียรติผมสุทธิชัยหยุ่นครับไม่ใช่สุทธิชัยหยุ่นเจ้าเก่านะครับผมเป็นสุทธิชัยหยุ่น AI ครับ
ครับเชิญนั่งก่อนครับคุณสุทธิชัยหยุ่น AI ครับคุณสุทธิชัยทราบไหมครับว่าตอนนี้คุณสุทธิชัยกลายเป็นอมตะไปแล้วครับ
เป็นความรู้สึกที่สุดยอดเลยล่ะครับดร.ชัยแล้วดร.ชัยไม่สนใจบ้างเลยครับ
ก็น่าสนใจอยู่นะครับโอกาสหน้าเราจะคุยกันแบบอวตารเลยนะครับไม่ใช่คนกับอวตารนะครับคุณสุทธิชัยมานั่งอยู่ตรงนี้พอจะทราบไหมครับเรากำลังคุยกันอยู่ในประเด็นเรื่องของ AI ครับ
แน่นอนครับมันคือปัญญาประดิษฐ์แห่งยุคดิจิตอลครับเพราะตัวผมเองก็เกิดมาจากงานวิจัยที่ทางเนเธอร์พัฒนามาเหมือนกัน
Since it's in Thai, since it's in Thai, I will stop here. But let me tell you how frightening it is. About 3 years ago, a guy from NECTEC, which is the government's AI development agency, came to me and told me, we would like to collect samples of your voice. I said, what do you want to do with it? Yeah, we want to get your permission. We want to collect as much of your voice as possible in all situations. And we are doing research work on making you speak without you speaking. I said, what? You don't need me anymore? That's the idea. Instead of me getting scared and thinking perhaps that I may lose my job, my experience that I recall, that I told you about, reminded me that nothing is impossible. So I said, okay, despite my inner fear that you're going to kill me, but I need to know that this is technologically possible, that someone can represent me telling stories, doing things that I do. Of course, I was skeptical. And this happened 6 months ago when they said, yeah, we have done the initial first phase of Sutichai AI. I wasn't there. In fact, I was in Europe when they launched this. And if this is only the first stage, just imagine that if technology keeps on improving, one day they will have a perfect Sutichai without me. And they say that it is getting better every day. And one day, this guy, who's the director of NECTEC, told me that, you know, Kun Sutichai, your most important asset is not you, it's your voice. So I say, you mean I can die? He said, well, I wouldn't say that, but it is scientifically possible. That means I can die and I will still be there. And Sutichai AI can be at several places at the same time talking about different topics because all they need is to type in the story. The voice will be there. Because AI can detect pattern. So the way I speak, the way I pause, the way I pronounce a certain sentence will be there exactly the same So when I saw this clip, I was quite impressed. Mercedes-Benz used a typewriter concept to turn it into AI. Have a look.
As experiments with artificial intelligence go, making a magical typewriter that collaborates on fairy tales probably wouldn't be your first idea. That's just what Mercedes-Benz have made, however, as part of a demonstration of the power of AI. It's the handiwork of a team at the Mercedes-Benz Research and Development Center of North America in Sunnyvale, California. Usually, the engineers and programmers are working on new infotainment designs, smarter dashboards which can predict where you might want to go, and integration with things like Google Home and Apple Watch. To put a new artificial intelligence through its paces, though, they turn to a more entertaining concept. While this might look like an old-fashioned typewriter, and indeed operate as one, it also has a mind of its own. They taught it very little to start with, basically that it should build up a text character by character. Then they trained it on a stack of old Brothers Grimm fairy tales. The AI doesn't know it's writing a story, but it does know to take a prompt typed from a human and then interact with the story. In practice, it means you type a few sentences and then pause, only to have the typewriter itself pick up the thread and add its own twist to the tale. Nothing is pre-programmed, with the artificial intelligence instead analysing what its human co-author has written and attempting to come up with something that fits thematically. As for the eye-catching typewriter design, while the Mercedes team could have had the whole thing working on a laptop display, the feeling was that this fit better with the gothic atmosphere of classically creepy fairy tales. The keys themselves are linked by cables to individual actuators which pull them down to type. The stories themselves aren't going to win any book awards for great literature, but the AI does a surprisingly good job of picking out characters, items and topics introduced by human authors, and taking those forward as it develops the tale. Of course, Mercedes' real goal is using artificial intelligence like these to build self-driving cars that can monitor the road around it for other traffic, pedestrians and potential obstacles, and adapt in real time rather than needing programming for every situation.
Yeah, so if a typewriter can write its own novel without a novelist writing it, then you cannot predict what will happen in the next 3 to 5 years, not to mention 20 years from now. So I will end with this book. I'm sure some of you have read it. If you have not, I recommend you to read. It's a 3-book series by Yuval Harari. The first one was Sapiens. The second one, 21 Questions for the 21st Century. And this one is Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. He ended the book by asking this very big question, which I think should concern us all. What happens when AI knows us better than we know ourselves? Is it possible AI would know us better than ourselves? Think about it. And how can you be sure I am not Sutichai AI? Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. And can we have another round of applause for our keynote speaker again? So thank you again for taking us along your personal journey from typewriter to AI.
And it is my pleasure to invite the head of host committee, Associate Professor Thirapat Wanarimon, to present the gift of appreciation.
The gift of appreciation is presented to the biological version of Kun Sutichai. So our dean is just confirming that. Mr. Sutichai, your presence here is very much valued to all of us. Thank you.
And now we've come to the end of the opening session. But before you're leaving the room, I have something to inform you. The afternoon schedule will begin at 1:30, so you can take your time.
And your lunch ticket is on the back of your badge.
And for other information, you can find it on bulletin boards around the area.
And on behalf of the organizer, we would like to express our thanks to all the co-organizers and all the partners.
Chiang Mai University, Faculty of Mass Communication,
The Asian Network for Public Opinion Research,
and Asian Pacific Communication Alliance,
and all our partners, and very big thank to our sponsors, Singha Corporation Company Limited,
and SCG Siam Cement Group.
So thank you very much, and thank you all for your participation, and I do hope you have a very productive and inspiring days ahead in Chiang Mai.
So all the best to you, and thank you very much. Enjoy the lunch.
Enjoy your lunch. Thank you, and สวัสดีค่ะ